All right, everyone, welcome back to the last chapter. So we need to add assembly lines that show the path that, for instance, this flange bolt needs to progress through to become assembled. And of course, SOLIDWORKS has automatic tools to do that. To add these, we are going to go back to the assembly file. So I'm going to click on Window, navigate back to my assembly file, and navigate to my configuration manager, and I have exploded view 1 and exploded view 2. Remember, I need to work in exploded view 2, so I'm going to collapse 1 and explode 2. So this is the view that I want to add these assembly lines to. And to do this, I'm going to make sure I'm in my isometric view so that I know how this is going to look on the face of the drawing. And to add these, right, they're lines, so they should be sketch lines, right? That's where we draw our lines in SOLIDWORKS. So normally I would think I would select a plane and initiate a new sketch command. The workflow here is unique to SOLIDWORKS, and its underlying principle is the same, but the command itself is just simply insert, edit, smart, explode lines. And if I execute this command, SOLIDWORKS is going to enter me into a unique sketch environment. It will automatically add assembly lines to all of the objects that I've exploded. And when I click the green check mark to that command, it will finalize those lines and automatically exit me from that special sketch mode. So of course, let's do this. So I execute that command. Over here in my properties, I can see that these are all of the objects that have an assembly line attached to them. So now I'm perfectly free to rotate this view and look around and see what I want and what I don't want. And if you look on the face of my drawing, I have an assembly line for only one of these 3mm screws. So for pure accuracy, having a line for all 6 is the most accurate, but yet there are so many lines and some crossing lines that quite frankly it's not very clear. So I'm simply going to select a bunch of them, like 5, and delete them. I'd like to keep this lower left because it's the closest to me in the drawing view. And as I select it over here in my component list, the first one I clicked on is the one I want to keep. So I'll move on and click the next one and simply press the delete key. Select the next one up and the delete key, next one up and the delete key, next one up and the delete key, next one up and the delete key. And so now I'm accidentally going to delete this one. So I'll hit my 3mm screw and delete it. And of course I didn't want to do that, but I highlight now that all I need to do is select the object and SOLIDWORKS adds the line right back in. So this list of parts is our access to accepting or not accepting what lines SOLIDWORKS wants to add. So I have this line here coming out of my guide rod assembly. I don't want to see that. So let's see. I guess I'll take that one, so it must be this guide rod assembly line that I don't want. And because I have this guide rod assembly line, oh, it goes from here back to there. So if I accept that line, I think I'm going to delete that one too. So now I have, let's see, a rod line which starts out here and goes to here, a guide rod assembly line that starts here and goes to there, and I delete that. And now I think I'm left with a rod line and a screw line. And I don't think I even need 2 of those. So I'm going to go to my flathead screw and delete that line. Now I'm left with just one line going through the center line, which is, I think that's great. So later when I edit, I'm going to drag this line out to the end of the screw. I want to highlight that I can't edit these lines in this view. I can only add or subtract them. So now I'm going to click the green check mark, and I have exited the explode line sketch mode. All right, so how do I edit these lines? I edit these lines by going back into the explode line sketch mode. And the normal workflow would be to come up to my history tree, and mine's kind of docked down here, and expand something and say I want to edit that sketch. This is a unique command in SOLIDWORKS, and of course then to get back in and edit it takes a unique workflow. So under exploded view is this explode line sketch. This takes me into that explode line sketch without inserting or taking out any explode lines. So I'm going to execute this command, and notice all the lines highlight in this kind of magenta color. So I'm going to want to edit these 4mm screw lines so that they start about here or maybe even there and progress just into the pneumatic cylinder. And I want to extend the end of this line out to the screw, showing the screw comes back in there. Okay, so how do I do that? So if I select a line, it's part of that original group, and the first thing I need to do is right-click and dissolve it away from the group. So I think I kind of messed something up there. So I hover over this object and right-click, and I can use the command dissolve entities. So it's now black, and I would have an opportunity to go in here and edit that however I wanted. So I'm also going to right-click on this one and dissolve it. And I want to edit this magenta line as well, so I will come in here and dissolve it. So now, if I select this line, I can see grips, and I could click and drag this grip. I'd be dragging in 3D, and it's difficult to understand where I'm really dropping it, right? SOLIDWORKS can't estimate in 3D where I'm dropping a 2D mouse. So to edit these or drag these, the end of these lines, I very clearly want to be looking at it orthographically in 2D. So I'm going to hit the space bar and select this orthographic face right here. I'm now looking straight on, and SOLIDWORKS will only drag this object in 2D. And I'm going to drag it over just short of that surface. And notice, right, there's no horizontal snap. So I'm going to drag it down just as close as I can to horizontal, a good estimate, and I'm okay with that. We're going to see when I go back and look at this in 3D that it's pretty much impossible to tell that it's not, quote, perfect. So let's look at that in 3D. I'll choose my isometric face, and those objects actually are pretty off center, and I actually have extra lines there. So I'm going to delete that line and this one as well and deal with just these lines. So now if I come in, let's see if I can drag that endpoint and drop it in 3D, and that worked pretty well. A little dangerous from the perspective that I have the option to drop it somewhere where I don't want, but I'll go back now to 2D, drag those over. Again, drop them a little short of the surface because I really don't want to have a snap occur. Look back at 3D. Still didn't quite give me what I want. Not sure why. but I can make small adjustments, and I'm okay with that. All right, so then I need to drag this line out to that screw. I'm still going to trust my 2D view, and I will drag this over all the way through, I guess just short of the screw. And let's see what I got in 3D. Kind of came out to the edge, put it back in there so that it looks good in 3D, and now I have those assembly lines that are needed. So I'm going to rebuild this and save this file. Right, I have all the lines that I need. Then I'm going to come back and go to the assembly drawing. And what I'd like to see all the lines already there. And I don't. And this, to me, I think is a version 2020 bug. So we're going to have to deal with this. So I'm going to go through a couple steps. Step one is going to be rebuild this and see if that adjusts it. It doesn't. So then I'm going to go back to my assembly. Let's see, and close this file. Or maybe I think all I need to do is actually collapse this. Now I'll go back to the drawing. That'll be the next step I'll try. Still no lines. So let's go back to the assembly file and try exploding that view too. Lines are back. Back to the sheet. Still not there. Well, let's try this. Let's go here and do a print preview to kind of show that they actually are there. They don't show up. So the last step I think I needed to do one time was to close this file. Sure, I'll change it or save it. And rebuild this file. So now when I open that assembly file, look at those views, I'm going to right click on one and collapse it and explode number 2. And there are the lines. Come back to my sheet 1 and rebuild it. Still not visible. So I'm going to pause this, debug it a little bit, and come back and explain what was going on. And I'm back. Well, that was a 2 or 3 second delay for you guys. It actually took 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 minutes for me to figure out what's going on. So when I have this view highlighted, right, remember I can see my properties, and this is as straightforward as I needed to adjust to the draft quality, and the lines popped up instantly, right? Hit escape and the lines are there. If I do file print preview, they're going to show up, and there they are. Interestingly enough now, if I come down to select this and notice it's back to high quality. So, kind of a little buggy here, but once you look then at your view, if you don't see those lines, there's a couple steps to go through. One is to rebuild your assembly and your drawing. Another one is to close the assembly file and reopen it. But your first step may be to toggle between draft and high quality. Turns out that was the trick that got my draft line or my assembly lines to show up. So at this point, our assembly project is complete, and this is what I'm expecting you to print out to a PDF, and of course, if you could, print it out to a B-size sheet of paper. Submit that to Blackboard. Hope these sessions have been helpful, and we will, of course, do some more on different topics.